really want to know, then come on, let's go. Take a stroll down those...
What's happening, everybody? Welcome into another edition of the Country Roads Webcast, brought to you by Trio 4 Productions, here today to preview the Mountaineers' 6th game of the season as the 6th-ranked Mountaineers get ready to take on the Iowa State Cyclones in Ames, Iowa on Saturday night at 7 p.m. and that game will be televised on Fox Sports 1. We've got a really great show coming for you today. Going to be joined here in a bit for a segment with Corey, who covers Iowa State and also helps cover the Big 12 as a whole for the team there at the Big 12 Country, and they do a great job of covering the entire Big 12 Conference, and got a really good segment coming up with him, and we'll get a deeper dive into the preview of this game and some of these matchups between Iowa State and West Virginia. But before we get to that, let's just get into a brief summary of the personnel of these teams and how I kind of expect them to attempt to attack each other. The West Virginia Mountaineers come into this game at 5-0 overall and 3-0 in Big 12 conference play, and they currently sit ranked number 6 in the entire country in both the AP poll and in the coaches poll. Iowa State comes into this game at 2-3 overall and 1-2 in Big 12 conference play, but they are coming off of their first conference win, and it was a big one over Oklahoma State on the road in Stillwater, a game that they won 48-42. The head coach of the Iowa State Cyclones is still Matt Campbell, who is now on his 3rd season, and he's done a really great job turning that program around in a hurry. They had a great season last year, getting 8 wins, and I mentioned they sit at 2-3 thus far this year, but they're maybe one of the best 2-3 teams you'll ever see. They've been in every game this season, and they're a team that I truly believe has the capability of beating anyone in this whole Big 12 conference. I think that they could take down anyone at any given time, and it's going to be a tough test for the Mountaineers, especially on the road in Ames, a place in Jack Trice Stadium that Iowa State plays very well, especially at night. And so it'll be a good test for these Mountaineers coming on Saturday. As far as what you can expect to see from the Iowa State offense, they have been stagnant early on in the season, but that changed in a big way last week as they finally had their breakthrough offensive performance, scoring 48 points in a shootout win over Oklahoma State, who was at the time ranked number 25 in the country. Offensively, their superstar still remains there in David Montgomery, and he's been their best player offensively over the past 2 seasons. But the surprising thing is that the previous game where they had that offensive breakout of 48 points, David Montgomery was not present and did not play in that game as he continues to battle an upper arm injury, and his status remains in question for this upcoming game against West Virginia as well. So that's impressive, though, that they had that offensive breakthrough that they did without arguably their best offensive player. But a guy that you can look at as the key to that offensive breakout, I think, was the quarterback that they put in the team's second offensive series in that game, and that's a true freshman in quarterback Brock Purdy, and he really played phenomenally in that game, and he filled the holes that were left by David Montgomery sitting out in that game and added a different dimension to this Iowa State offense with his legs and his running ability, as he finished with 19 carries for 84 yards to go along with 318 yards passing and 4 touchdowns through the air. And it was a phenomenal performance for him, especially being a true freshman, and he's got a lot of potential, and look to see him get his first career start in this upcoming game against West Virginia as well, as last year's starter Kyle Kempt is currently still battling injury and is also doubtful for this game against the Mountaineers at this point. The Iowa State offense in years past has always possessed a big-time playmaker on the outside. In the past, it was Allen Lazard, and this year they have another guy that stepped into that role, and that's Hakeem Butler, a 6'6" wideout who leads the team in receiving yards with 372 and also in receiving touchdowns, currently with 4 on the season. So he's a player the Mountaineers will have to watch out for and make sure they put a guy on and cover him, because he's a guy that can go to downfield. He's made big plays throughout this season, and they'll look to get the ball to him and get it into his hands and see him make some plays, as he'll have a height advantage over these Mountaineer corners. But that's nothing they haven't seen before, as Texas Tech had a 6'5" and a 6'6" wide receiver as well. So the Mountaineers should be ready for Hakeem Butler, but that's still a guy to keep an eye on for this Iowa State offense. Defensively for Iowa State, that's been where they've been the strongest in the past couple of seasons, and that's no different this year, as So far this year, they have held all 5 of their opponents underneath their points per game average on the season. So every team they've played, they've held them under their scoring average. So their defense continues their impressive play thus far this season that they have done in years past as well. And that defense has solid players at all 3 levels of that defense. On that defensive front, on the defensive line, you'll see a very strong player in the defensive end, Jaquan Bailey, and he leads the team in sacks and it also leads the team in tackles for loss. Then at the next level of that defense, they have a player that stepped in very good at that linebacker spot. Joel Lanning was a big-time player for them at that linebacker spot last year, and a lot of people thought that their defense may take a step back with losing him, but a true freshman in Mike Rose has stepped up and played phenomenally, and I think he's a candidate for freshman All-American. He's played so well at that position. He's racked up a lot of stops. And then in the secondary, they also possess 2 really good players there in the cornerback, Brian Peavy, who is currently tied for the most pass breakups among all active FBS defenders, so he's always making plays on the ball. And then they also have an excellent safety in Braxton Lewis, who is tied for 4th in the country in interceptions per game up to this point. Looking at what you can expect to see Iowa State do and how they may attack this Mountaineer team, one thing you can say about Iowa State is that in these past couple years, they've kind of become the league's new Kansas State. They play hard, they play smart, and they are very technically and fundamentally sound, and they don't make a lot of mistakes, and they won't beat themselves, and they make you beat them, and they're a very tough team to play. And they're going to possess a patient offense in this one. They don't go up tempo like a lot of these other Big 12 offenses do. They can spread you out at times. You'll see them use the read option game, especially with the new quarterback Brock Purdy, who can hurt you with his legs as well as his arm. But for the most part, you see them use some power a lot as well. And they're going to have a patient offense that's going to try and limit West Virginia's possessions like a lot of these other teams the Mountaineers have faced. So the Mountaineer defense will have to remain steadfast in their assignments and get some stops and try and get this Iowa State offense off the field and be prepared for a running quarterback in Brock Purdy, which has really helped their offense a lot because thus far this season, earlier, their offensive line had struggled a lot, and so having a quarterback that can move around a lot can really mask some of those struggles, and I think that's what you saw happen for them last game as he really made some plays with his feet as well as with his arms, so look out for that on the Iowa State offense. Defensively, as I said, they're very solid, and they're an attacking defense that won't make a lot of mistakes, and they will identify your offense's weaknesses and take away your strengths and try and make you use those weaknesses to beat them. It's kind of like the old adage that they're going to make you beat them with your left hand, and that's definitely what this Iowa State team does. They're very tough, and they play up to their competition always, and I think you can expect a very dogfight type game, and they're a team that's going to frustrate you, and you're going to have to remain focused and to try and get a win against this team because they're not going to make it easy for you. They never have these past couple of years, and they've continued to play that way this year. They're 2-3, but they've been in every game that they've played, and they're just a tough team, and they're a tough out. It's going to be a good test for the Mountaineers down there in Ames. As far as how the Mountaineers may plan to attack them, I think offensively they will just need to trust the run, as they will likely see a light box, and they've had some success going into that light box against Iowa State in these past couple seasons. You saw 2 seasons ago, Martel Pettaway got his red shirt pulled, had over 30 rushing attempts and over 180 rushing yards, and then last season they saw some success in the run game as well. So I think this is a game where West Virginia will need the run blocking to be good, and the running backs that West Virginia employs to really step up and play the type of game that they're capable of playing, because there's probably going to be a light box and a good chance for West Virginia to get off some good run plays in this game, and then hopefully that will lead to some effectiveness through the pass. And I think the biggest key for West Virginia in this one offensively is the offensive line to improve their play. We've seen them struggle a little bit the past couple of weeks, some of that due to injury. But I think if they can provide good run blocking and do a better job keeping the pocket clean for Will Greer and give him some time, West Virginia has a good shot to be able to move the ball on this Iowa State team some, even though Iowa State's not going to make it easy for them to do so. And then defensively, they just need to capitalize on their opportunities, stick to their assignments, know what to watch for, don't get fooled on the zone read, have a guy spy the quarterback possibly at all times if you can, and watch for Hakeem Butler deep as he tries to go over top of these corners with his height, and I think they'll do a good job of containing him. And I think priority number 1 against this Iowa State team is going to be to stop the run and stop the running game. And if they can do that and make them one-dimensional, that'll help a lot. But quarterback scramble is something they're going to have to be on the lookout for. So the main thing for the defense is just to remain focused, continue to play the way they have all year, be attacking, but also stick to your assignments and know who you have, and don't have any missed assignments there. And I think their defense will be able to stop this Iowa State offense in this football game. So that's just kind of a brief summary of some of the personnel for Iowa State and what they've done up to this point in the season, and how you can kind of expect both of these teams to attempt to attack each other, I feel like. And so now we're going to go ahead and get to our segment with Corey from the Big XII Country, and a great interview coming up with him as we dive deeper into our preview of this game and learn a little bit more about this Iowa State team and kind of his perspective on how this game may end up going. So great interview and great segment coming up here. Stay tuned to the Country Roads Webcast. Alright, as promised here on the Country Roads Webcast, we are joined by Corey, who helps cover Iowa State for the Big XII Country team, and they do a great job covering the Big XII Conference as a whole, and got a lot of good content there. Appreciate you coming on, Corey. How you doing, man?
I'm great. How are you, Jordan? Thanks for having me.
Oh, absolutely, no problem. I'm doing pretty good. Been a good season so far, so that's always good.
Yeah, that'll help keep spirits up.
Yeah, for sure. So let's dive into this preview here and talk a little Iowa State, West Virginia. Start talking off Iowa State. I want to talk about their head coach, Matt Campbell. He was the Big 12 Conference's Coach of the Year last year, and rightfully so. They improved tremendously. They went 8-5 last season, set a school record, 3 wins over ranked teams, and that led to a lot of high expectations coming into this season. And in this season, they've already beaten one ranked team as well, beating number 25 Oklahoma State last week. So despite coming into this game with a 2-3 record, I've mentioned before this may be one of the best 2-3 teams you'll ever see as they've continued their improvement, and I think that they have the capability of beating anybody in the Big 12, really. With this season being only Matt Campbell's 3rd season at the helm, how has he turned this Iowa State program around so quickly and molded them into a very competitive team in this conference?
I think it has everything to do with him himself, as he had success doing the same thing at Toledo. I said Temple. At Toledo before he came here, and he had very good success there in only a couple of seasons. And people at Iowa State saw what he had to offer and needed a turnaround and said, hey, give this guy a shot, and he has delivered profoundly. I am very, very pleased at what he's been able to do, and it's just based on him putting in the work himself, and the guys see it, so they buy in, and then the upperclassmen buy in, and that causes the freshmen and the sophomores to buy in, and then the recruits see the culture of the place, and they're like, that's a place I want to be, and I want to be a part of something good like that. And it's been a blessing, really, that he's been able to do it so fast. And it's because you see like somebody like David Beatty at Kansas, who has, I think this is his 4th season, which is a lot more than people usually get at Kansas. And that's a lot of the expectations that I think people had with Matt Campbell coming in here, is just having a couple of seasons trying to get an extra win or 2 each season, and then moving on to another guy. But I don't see that happening. As long as Matt Campbell wants to stay here, I think they'll keep him around, and I think he's the guy for the job.
Yeah, I agree with you there completely. I think that he really surprised some people with how quickly he did it, going from 3 wins in the first year to 8 wins last year. And I think that they definitely probably really got a good guy in him doing that job there. Continuing to talk about him a little bit, a big talking point involving him this offseason at Iowa State was them choosing not to hire another offensive coordinator after the previous offensive coordinator, Tom Manning, left for the NFL, and instead Matt Campbell opted to call the plays for the offense himself. And the noise of people questioning that decision kind of became even louder after Iowa State struggled offensively through the first few games of the season. But after last week, a lot of that talk has died down thanks to a breakthrough performance that saw him put up a season-best 48 points in that win over then 25th-ranked Oklahoma State, and an early quarterback change that Matt Campbell made, pulling Zeb Nolan and bringing in true freshman Brock Purdy on the team's second season. He was second series rather, and Purdy was absolutely outstanding, both with his arms and his legs. And how much of the offensive breakthrough that they had can be credited to Brock Purdy, and I assume he'll be making his first career start in this game against West Virginia. And if that is the case, do you think he's the guy going forward for Iowa State?
You mentioned Tom Manning in the beginning and his departure. I've never been a guy to think that the head coach should be the one calling plays. Mm-hmm. There are some exceptions, such as Lincoln Riley at Oklahoma. Oh, yeah. I mean, he was the best play caller in the nation and became a head coach, and nobody really wanted him to hand it off.
Right.
But in general, I don't think it's the best philosophy, and it was reinforced for the first couple of weeks, though I will not say that was Matt Campbell's fault. Not having a week 1 game was what I contribute the reason that Iowa State had such offensive struggles. And Zeb Nolan did not look great after Cal Kent got injured in the Iowa game. Mm-hmm. But it's Iowa. It's such a defensive game in the first place that I didn't really fault Matt Campbell again.
Right.
And then, of course, David Montgomery getting injured didn't help anything. But, hey, Oklahoma State apparently didn't have a problem with letting everybody else run all over them either. But I don't have a problem with Matt Campbell calling plays anymore. I never really did, but I definitely don't now. It's just been 1 week, so it's hard to say, but I think it'll continue. The Oklahoma State game was fantastically coached on both sides of the ball, and I'm glad that we had good play calling to get people out of thinking that something needed to change. And, of course, I will say that a lot of that was attributed to Brock Purdy. Mm-hmm. He came in, and a lot of people compared him to what Kyle Kemp did against Oklahoma last year whenever he came in to replace Jacob Park.
Right.
And, of course, everybody knew that comparison was going to happen.
Of course.
But I think Brock Purdy exceeded my expectations beyond what I thought anything he was going to do. And like you said, I do absolutely see him getting his first career start this week, and I think he'll continue.
Yeah, I think when you got a guy with a hot hand like that coming off a performance in the way he did, especially performing that well as a true freshman, there's no way you can take that job away from him at this point.
Absolutely. I got asked last night how many quarterbacks I think that we'll see on Saturday, and I hope it's one. Right. I don't see a reason at all to take away from the guy who's got the hot hand, especially when he outperforms Zeb Nolan in every facet that I saw. And I think Matt Campbell's going to recognize that. He's always been a guy to see who's going to buy in and who's going to do the work. And if Brock Purdy performs in practice, then we'll see him on the first drive for Iowa State on Saturday.
I think so, as well we should, really. And I think the dimension that he brings with his legs really helps a lot, because that Iowa State offensive line kind of had some struggles early on this season, and having a quarterback that can run and make some plays outside the pocket and make some plays in the run game really helps mask some of those struggles that the offensive line has.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking more on that offensive breakthrough last week for Iowa State, surprisingly enough, it came without their offensive star and playmaker and running back David Montgomery, who's shown to be one of the better backs in the conference and really one of the better backs in the nation over these past couple seasons. That being said, he's battling that upper arm injury. What's his status for this upcoming game against West Virginia? And speaking more on that performance, that has to have Iowa State excited for how good this offense could potentially be when he comes back, especially with the added threat of Brock Purdy running, maybe opening up some more running lanes for David Montgomery in the future.
As far as David Montgomery's status, I haven't seen anything definitive, but the best piece of advice that I could give you is somebody said this week that he's always been a guy who battles, and he doesn't care one way or the other. If he's physically able, he will do it, and I think he will be. I don't know if he'll get every single snap like he normally does, or not every single, like 75% of the snaps like he normally does, but I do believe that we will see him, maybe not on the first drive. We'll see how the day goes. But whenever he does come back completely healthy, the sky's the limit for this offense. They went from minimal, it was 14 points against TCU, and then all of a sudden busted off 48. Mm-hmm. I will say it's a heck of a lot different between the TCU defense and the OSU defense.
Oh, yeah, that's
but it ain't that much of a difference.
No.
And if you take Brock Purdy and his running threat, as well as the arm that he showcased against Oklahoma State, it will be hell for any defense that tries to stack the box against David Montgomery when he comes back, or then they get burned over the top and then they pull the safeties off and all of a sudden David Montgomery's gashed for 20 yards every play. It'll be a lot of fun. The biggest thing to me is the offensive line, and it seems like Matt Campbell's finally found a group of guys that he can work with, because they started the first 3 games, they had 3 different starting lineups at offensive line. But it's been the same since then, and seems like they finally come together and mesh like they needed to and perform well each week, and it's getting better.
Absolutely. I think that offense has a lot of potential right now going forward through this season for sure. And that being said, I want to flip over to the other side of the ball for the Cyclones and talk about that defense a little bit. Going back to last season, Iowa State has seen outstanding improvement in their defensive play, and that's continued into this season as well. In their last 13 games, they've only given up more than 20 points on 3 different occasions, and they've held 3 of their 5 opponents this season to under 300 yards of total offense. What do you feel has led to such an improvement in their performance dating back to last season, and do you see them sustaining that type of defensive success going forward in the Matt Campbell era?
I don't see anything changing. I could not tell you what lit a fire under the defense's ass last year and what has continued into this year. I wish I knew, because I have them put forth in everything that I ever see. But I am excited. I love how the defense is performing, especially like you said, 3 teams have gained over 20 points in the last 13 games is an outstanding achievement playing in the Big 12.
Sure.
And I don't see anything changing going in. I don't see anything changing going into this week. I think West Virginia is going to score. I see it coming. There's no way to hold Will Greer in that offense back. But it will be a fight. It won't be easy. And I'm excited to see that defense play that offense. And I don't see any change in the defense going forward into next season, the rest of the season, next season, the season after that. I'm really excited about Mike Rose coming up, big in the middle linebacker position,
solid.
Just playing outside of his mind. Oh, yeah, absolutely. Very solid all season, just came pretty much out of nowhere.
Oh, yeah.
And now he's a household name. And it's been great. He's one of the reasons that the defense has continued this year, because everybody's seeing, hey, a young guy can play and he knows what he's doing. Rally around him. And then, of course, Willie Harvey, as usual, my favorite player on that defense, to be honest. It's a lot of fun, and I'm excited to see how it works out this week.
Absolutely. I think that Mike Rose has the potential to possibly be a freshman All-American, and he's really played a big part for that defense, because, a lot of concerns were there after losing Joel Lanning, who was going to step up there, and Mike Rose has definitely done that. Talking more about that Iowa State defense and getting into more of the specifics of this matchup against West Virginia. Last week, Iowa State set a school record as they totaled 16 tackles for a loss, and they also tied another school record, gaining 7 sacks in that game. And going back to the second half of the Texas Tech game, and then last week against Kansas, albeit with some injuries involved, WVU offensive line has actually struggled somewhat in the past 2 games. They're solid on the tackle spots, but mainly the interior of that line has some question marks. Do you think that spells some trouble for the Mountaineers coming into this game, where they'll face that Iowa State defense that's averaging 10 tackles for a loss a game over the last 4 games? And how do you see that matchup in the trenches playing out in this one?
I got to give the edge to Iowa State. I know I'm a homer, but offensive line for West Virginia was the biggest question coming into this season, at least on offense, if not the whole thing. Mm-hmm. And while they did perform well the first few weeks, and I'm not going to knock them the last couple of weeks. I mean, everybody's going to have a bad game. But I think Iowa State showing out, giving 7 sacks against Oklahoma State, really shows the rest of the teams that they play that it's not going to be a cakewalk in those trenches. And especially when you have guys that fill holes like Iowa State does, and then send a linebacker on the blitz and there ain't nobody to block him. And I know Will Greer is mobile as a pocket passer can be, but I think he's going to be under pressure for most of the day.
I agree with that. I think that it's going to be tough, and it's going to be a big test for this WVU offensive line. They're supposed to be getting some of those players that were injured the past couple weeks back, so that may help a little bit. But if Will Greer is running for his life in the pocket all day on this one, and they can't open up any running lanes, it's going to be a long day, because Iowa State's a tough team and a tough team to beat, especially in Ames, and they're going to make you. They're a team that I always say is going to make you beat them with your left hand, and they'll definitely identify your weaknesses, and they're going to attack them, and that's one that West Virginia has had up to this point in the season.
I will say Will Grier is one heck of a quarterback to have back there whenever he's under fire. It's amazing to watch what he can do. Like I said, he's not as mobile as I would like him to be personally.
Right.
But he makes throws when he's not supposed to make throws, and it is scary sometimes. So I don't think it will be as bad for West Virginia as people say it will be. I think it'll be interesting. I'm excited. I really am excited for this game.
I am too. I think it's going to be a good matchup. And talking more about that matchup and West Virginia's passing offense, they do have one of the better passing offenses in the conference and around the country really as well. And but they'll be going up against a pretty good Iowa State secondary that features the reigning Big 12 Player of the Week from last week and safety Braxton Lewis, who's had an interception in 3 consecutive games, and also a solid corner in Brian Peavy. And so that's another matchup to watch. But if the Mountaineer offensive line can keep the pocket clean and give Will Grier some time to throw, what are your thoughts on the matchup between the West Virginia passing offense and that Iowa State secondary?
If Will Grier does not get touched, it's going to be a long game for the Cyclones. Man, David Sills, Gary Jennings, Sims, and the rest of those receivers are freaking huge. Mm-hmm. That is the one thing that scares me more than anything is tall wide receivers, because these corners, Davey stands 6'1", I think DeAndre Payne is 6 foot if he's that tall. It will be a long game if Will Grier does not get forced out of the pocket. That being said, I'm not saying that PV and Payne are not up to it, but you can't expect guys that have 6 inches of height on another guy not to go up and get it 50% of the time.
Right.
And I know Will Grier's got enough accuracy that he can put a ball in there, and half the time, if it's not more than that, it'll get caught. So it'll be a long game if the defensive line does not get pressure.
I could definitely see that. I think it's a good matchup to watch, and a big part of it is going to depend on how much pressure the Iowa State defensive line gets and how much they put pressure on Will Grier and make him get rid of the ball maybe before he's ready to. Flipping over to the other side of the ball for the Mountaineers now, their defense has impressed so far this season and has greatly improved from last season, as they currently lead the Big 12 in scoring defense, giving up only 18.6 points per game thus far, and also lead the conference in tackles for loss, averaging just under 10 a game. And they've shown to be a very fast and attacking unit so far this season. It's one of the faster West Virginia defenses that I can recall of in recent memory. And do you think that this West Virginia defense has the capability to cause Iowa State some trouble and maybe see that offense revert to the form it had earlier this season? Or do you see the breakthrough Iowa State had last game and see them being able to carry it over and rack up some yards and score some points on this Mountaineer defense?
Well, it seems like a little bit of a jab from you. I'm not sure if you meant it that way, but I don't think that there's any team that Iowa State has left on the schedule that's going to be able to revert them to the 3 points they scored against Iowa and such. That offensive breakthrough is going to continue. That being said, West Virginia's defense this year is the best West Virginia defense that I can recall, honestly, in recent memory, probably in this decade.
It's definitely the best since they've been in the Big 12. I'll say that.
Currently, right now, it's number 2, I think, after Texas. But watching them play, I'd have to agree. Although Texas looked great against Oklahoma last week. But anyway, you were correct. West Virginia's defense is very, very fast and fun to watch. And that defensive line has been getting this backfield like nobody's business. I did not expect that coming into the season. But facing a mobile quarterback, which Brock Purdy is and showed that he can be last week, if he starts, it will not be easy for the West Virginia defense all game long.
I agree.
The other thing, other than Brock Purdy, which it's fantastic to have an offense with a mobile quarterback, he extends plays, and it makes game planning a lot easier, because if you get in a situation where you maybe need a scramble for 6 yards and you have a guy that can do that, it's fantastic. Craziest thing I've seen this season, it wasn't Purdy, but Zeb Nolan, 3rd and 25 against TCU, and he scrambles for 27, gets first down. Purdy is twice the runner that Zeb Nolan is, so it's great to have a guy who can do that. But the other thing, other than quarterback play, and obviously running backs that we discussed earlier, Hakeem Butler, he is a force and is tall and strong, and he can go up and rip balls out of guys' hands and just straight up walk out of tackles, basically. And run to the end zone faster than anybody else. It is going to be fun to see him this week and see what he's able to do against that secondary, which I think is the weak point of the West Virginia defense.
I'll agree with you on that one. It's definitely a mismatch there, and it's pretty much a mismatch for Hakeem Bailey no matter what corners he's going against. He's very impressive. Mm-hmm. An NFL receiver. I watched him in that game against Oklahoma, and he put on a show in that one, and I'm really impressed by him.
Oh, man, I think he had 3 touchdowns that day where 3 or more guys touched him.
Oh, yeah, he broke his. Well, not only was he going up and getting it, but then he was just not letting anybody bring him to the ground either and just dragging people in the end zone. It was unbelievable. And I think that the thing that worries me in this game, aside from that, is what we mentioned about the quarterback being a running threat. Looking at the only other dual-threat quarterback that West Virginia really faced this year, and that was Jet Duffy for Texas Tech, and he really caused them some problems in that second half. Although you can possibly,
that second half for West Virginia was a rough game.
Yeah, you can make the excuse that they weren't prepared for a running quarterback, but I don't know. I've seen this Mountaineer defense too much in the past struggle against a running quarterback to say that's necessarily the case. So I'm anxious to see how they do with a week to game plan for a running quarterback and see if they do any better than they have in years past in that aspect.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking of Iowa State at home, I think it's well known throughout the conference that Jack Trice Stadium is always very tough to play, especially when you have to go there and play at night. And we've seen Iowa State pull off some big upsets there and big wins against highly ranked teams in the past. How big of an advantage is it for Iowa State to get this game at home and to get it at home under the lights as well?
Man, Jack Trice Stadium at 7 o'clock is scary for anyone. And whenever this game was announced, the time for the game was announced, I immediately knew that it was going to be a good one. I knew it before, but, I don't care if you already knew this was going to be a 1-point win for either team if you were in the future. As soon as you see it's 7 o'clock, why it's in Jack Trice Stadium, you know it's going to be a great game to watch. And I'm excited because get those fans rocking, and something happens, something in the first quarter. What I'm hoping for is a turnover early or get a score and then maybe a muff punt, something like that, and get that crowd rocking because they're already going to be to start the game. And if Iowa State gets any juice in that first quarter, honestly, it's going to be tough to stop. Just ask Oklahoma State. That's what happened last week is Iowa State just wouldn't let them get back in the game.
Yep.
They were never far out of it, of course, but every single time Oklahoma State scored, Iowa State was already up on score, and they'd go and score again. That's what I'm expecting to happen this week. If Iowa State's going to win, jump out early, let the crowd get into the game, and continue. Don't stop.
Absolutely. Iowa State's definitely a team that's always resilient, and they're going to give you their best game. And they're not a team that you really see get blown out as these past couple of years. You just don't really see it a lot. They're in every game, and they're going to frustrate you, and it's going to be a tough game that goes down to the wire 9 times out of 10. That being said, looking ahead to this game, what are maybe your thoughts on how it plays out, and you care to offer up a prediction as to how it ends up on Saturday in Ames?
I think it's going to be a great game. I've said it a million times. I won't stop saying it. This is probably the game that I've been most excited for all season long and maybe for the rest of the season. 7 o'clock games in Ames, there's just nothing like it. And especially with the way West Virginia's been playing, being undefeated, being 6th in the nation, it's dangerous. I would not like to be West Virginia in this situation. Mm-hmm. And Iowa State knows it. West Virginia knows it. We're going to get one hell of a game. As for a prediction, I said it. I've been saying it all week, and this is going to sound dumb. Every time in a big game that I pick Iowa State loses. Every time in a big game I pick against Iowa State wins. Therefore, I am choosing West Virginia to win 37-27.
I see that little reverse psychology there. I don't blame you. You never know.
Man, every big game, every single one. TCU the last 2 years, Oklahoma the last 2 years, Texas last year. Every big game, man. I'm telling you.
That's wild there. It's a game that I'm nervous about for West Virginia for sure. I think that Like I said, Iowa State's 2-3, but this is the best 2-3 team you may ever see. And I think that
absolutely.
I think this is definitely the toughest test West Virginia's had up to this point. And it's going to tell us a lot about this West Virginia team and where they really stand. And it's a good barometer for them and for Iowa State as well, because they're a team that can beat anybody in this conference, and they've got a chance to still finish highly ranked in this conference, I think. And this game would be a good springboard for them to be able to do so.
This conference is wide open this year. We say that every year, but I don't remember a year where every team in this conference, minus Kansas and Kansas State, unfortunately, but 7 or 8 out of the 10 teams in this conference are close to being ranked or could beat anyone in the nation right now.
I agree. It's definitely wide open, more wide open than I remember it being in years past. Usually it's like Oklahoma and everybody else, but I think that it's a chance where it's wide open. Anybody's got a shot right now, and this game's going to go a long way in determining how that ranking goes going forward, I think. And I'm really looking forward to it on Saturday. Can't wait to see it. That being said, before I let you go and let you get out of here, you care to share with us where our listeners can find you and find your guys' stuff for the Big 12 country, and because you guys do a really good job covering the Big 12, and that way our listeners know where to find you guys and listen to you guys and see y'all's coverage.
I appreciate you. Personally, I operate the Iowa State handle for Big 12 Country, which is at Cyclones_B12C on Twitter. And our main branch is at Big XII Country.
Absolutely. Great stuff from you guys there. Always listen to y'all's podcasts and follow y'all's accounts on Twitter and for some good Big 12 coverage. And hopefully our listeners will do that too now. And really great segment with you, Corey. Appreciate you coming on, man, and looking forward to a great game on Saturday.
Thank you so much for having me, man. I'm really excited about this one.
All right, so really great segment there with Corey, who helps cover Iowa State for the Big 12 country, and they've got a great team that covers the Big 12 conference. And be sure and check him out on their social media handles that he shared with us, and check out their podcast as well, the Big 12 Country podcast. They do a great job covering the conference, and great segment there. And really glad Corey got a chance to come on, and appreciate him for doing so and help us get a better preview of this Iowa State team and delve a little bit more into this matchup between West Virginia and Iowa State that I think is going to be a really good matchup coming in this game on Saturday. Having said that, let's get into my X Factor for this game. My X Factor for this game, I mentioned it briefly in the interview there with Corey. My X Factor is the West Virginia offensive line. They will need to play their best ball to be able to give West Virginia a chance to do some things on offense in this one, and definitely play better than they have last week and in that second half against Texas Tech. I know they were dealing with some injuries in those spots, and hopefully getting Joe Brown and those guys back, and Chase Barrett as well, and hopefully the interior of this offensive line can hold up, because Iowa State's an attacking defense, and as I mentioned earlier, they had 16 tackles for a loss last week, and that's just a ridiculous number. And they also had 7 sacks. So if you don't know your assignments and pick up your assignments, they can get in there and get some sacks on West Virginia. And I think that the offensive line is going to need to get some push to open up some holes for this run game, for West Virginia to have some success in this game, as they may be running into a light box at times. And then I also think that they're going to be able to have to know their assignments and identify stunts and know who they're blocking in pass protection to be able to keep Will Greer up and keep him into a clean pocket. And I think that'll give West Virginia a much better chance to win, as if the offensive line performs better. I think West Virginia's offense has a good chance of moving the ball and putting up some yards and putting up some points if the offensive line does its job. So my X factor in this game to help West Virginia get a win is the offensive line. That being said, let's talk about my prediction for this game.
It's that time. It's prediction time.
As far as my prediction for this game, I've said it before and I'll say it again. This, in my opinion, will be the toughest test that West Virginia has had to face up to this point in the season. Iowa State is a team that will frustrate them. They will make this a dogfight, and West Virginia is going to have to remain resilient and mentally tough. But I also think that West Virginia has the veterans on this team, and they have the leadership and the chemistry on this team to be able to remain resilient and remain mentally tough and limit mistakes and make the plays when they need to win this game. And I expect the West Virginia defense to be ready and have a solid performance as they have all season, and I think that this game they'll be able to do so. I think they've been studying Brock Purdy all week, and that's going to help them a lot. And I think they'll be able to get the stops and get Iowa State off the field when they need to. And I expect the West Virginia offense to make the plays when they matter most and when they really need them. And I think that Will Greer is a guy that you got to have confidence in, and he's a very clutch guy. He's shown to be that in the past, and I think this is a game where you'll need to see Will Greer use that clutch gene in this one, as it may come down to who has the ball last or end of the game scoring drive for the West Virginia offense. But I think that they have the players and the playmakers to make the plays when they matter most, and I think that this West Virginia team does enough to walk away with a big road win in this one in a very hostile environment, and their toughest test this season against Iowa State. And I've got West Virginia winning this one 31-24. All right, that being said, that will pretty much wrap up our Game 6 preview for the West Virginia Mountaineers as they get set to take on the Iowa State Cyclones in Ames, Iowa on Saturday night. And that game will kick at 7 o'clock and be televised on Fox Sports 1. So, 6th ranked in the country, West Virginia Mountaineers. Another true road game, night game, tough test coming up. Be sure and tune in. Appreciate you guys for tuning in to the Country Roads webcast. If you don't already, follow us on Twitter, and we provide a lot of good updates on there as well as live tweets during these West Virginia games. So follow our coverage on there. You can do that by searching our Twitter handle at WVU Country Roads. Thanks for everyone for tuning in. This has been the Country Roads webcast, brought to you by Trio 4 Productions. As always, I'm your host, Jordan Cruz, and until next time, let's go Mountaineers.
Are you ready to party? Country road.